Hello, welcome to another episode of Agile Actually. My name is Simon Reindl, professional Scrum trainer, Agile coach, entrepreneur, author. With me is my friend and colleague Martin Hinshelwood. Hello, Martin. How you doing?
Hey Simon, how's it going?
Also, professional Scrum trainer, Kanban trainer, entrepreneur, coach, MVP of Microsoft.
Yep.
Yeah, and all round good chap.
Mostly.
Mostly. Okay, you're human, right? We all have
Yeah.
foibles. All right, moving swiftly on. This episode, we were thinking about stuff that was going down in the world, and we thought it would be interesting to discuss ethics and agility.
Mm.
Ethics being a moral principle of doing the right thing, so understanding the difference between right and wrong and acting on it,
Mm-hmm.
and agility being the whole movement, like all of it, where frameworks, whatever, the industry that is become agile, helping organizations deliver better value more quickly. Is it possible for an organization to be agile and unethical?
Hmm.
Have there ever been examples of organizations behaving in an unethical way?
Hmm.
Are there consequences to organizations doing that? Um, Discuss. What's your thoughts, Martin?
I think it's a very I think it's a very gnarly issue because there are loads of things that people believe to be ethical that aren't, or maybe I'm wrong in the way I'm phrasing that. Maybe there are just lots of people who don't understand ethics. That's
Okay.
possibly what it could be. Because I think there's doing things unethically and not understanding that you're being unethical, and then there's deliberately doing something unethical that you know is unethical.
Okay, so we've got conscious and unconscious ethical behavior.
Yeah.
I'd also like to call out that you use the term gnarly in the context of complex as opposed to gnarly as in cool. Um,
Oh, I did not know I had another. I was
no,
thinking
no,
of.
no, no. Gnarly in certain subcultures means really cool.
Okay, was not aware of that.
Yeah.
That's the age thing, right?
I'm not sure. Well, I think I'm older than you. So, yeah, thanks for that. All right. So, do you think most businesses operate with a moral compass?
Oh, not sure I like that word most.
Well, I'm putting some. Uh,
Yeah.
well, do you want me to rattle through the businesses that have at one time or another executed a poor or ambiguous moral choice that I'm aware of?
Sure. I could probably, maybe I could add to that list, or maybe I'm just thinking of the same companies as you are.
Yeah, okay. So Ford, with their Pinto release, they consciously released a car that would probably cause deaths. Um,
Uh, the
Curiously
Ford,
enough,
the Ford Mondeo pulled to the left under heavy braking.
Renault with the bonnet catch that would fly up.
Okay.
How about Exxon? All right, we really want to like this will get everybody running for covers. Really dangerous one. Exxon had evidence that the oil industry would cause climate change in 1970 and paid to suppress the information and discredit the information.
Yep.
So
I.
there,
Yep.
there is climate change. Exxon, one of the biggest oil companies, knew about it, actionably invested in misinformation around it.
Yep. I'm pretty sure the tobacco companies can be put on that list as well for the same style of action.
Yeah, at a certain point, they became aware that smoking wasn't so good for you, right?
Yep. Gone with the adverts that dentists put out that smoking was good for you and doctors that helped you with your asthma, right?
How about this? Diabetes and sugar addiction kills 3 times more people than smoking in America.
And it's heavily regulated in a way that promotes it.
Hmm. Corn syrup is in everything.
Everything in the US, everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Um, what about Zoom's changing of its user policy that if you continue to use Zoom, you agree for it to sample some of your
Stuff into
data?
AI, right? That was the update was that they would be able to consume have their AI consume all of that content to learn off your conscience.
Interesting. Oh, here's a personal beef of mine. I got auto banned from playing Call of Duty by installing a new mouse. So Activision have banned my profile from playing Call of Duty because I installed Logitech suite of G Sync, and it's on a banned list, and so my account got banned, which means I'm not able to use a product. For not for cheating, but Logitech, Activision don't tell you that you can't use that, or Corsair's IQ, or a couple of other things, and they're known false positives. But because they're
Yep.
making so much money, they're not adapting their ricochet system, and they just auto ban people. It's a thing. Is that ethical? Take someone's money and then ban them?
Yep. That's bad.
So
What
I'm
about
feeling brave.
um, what about Boeing?
What about Boeing?
Boeing deliberately made a business choice to focus on shipping rather than quality.
Are you talking about the 737 Max?
737 Max is definitely
Okay.
a good example of that.
So
And
allegedly, we have to use that term, otherwise we'll be bankrupt. I, I'm very keen on aviation. The I think the ethical challenge is Boeing very much knew the behaviors of the 737 Max, and they made a particular feature optional and didn't educate about it. You'll find the airlines that suffered those crashes did not educate their aircrew properly on the operation of the equipment.
yes, however, they were not told that there was a change
No.
to the operation of the equipment.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
So yeah, it's dubious ground, right?
Yep,
So
yep, absolutely.
do you launch a product that is potentially dangerous? Well, we don't have all the facts. So the Activision one, I know, is true, and you can't see me because you've done it to me. That's personal. I didn't cheat. You banned me. What's wrong? What
Yep.
about Meta? Meta's harvesting of data from since they bought WhatsApp and
Well, also
profiling.
harvesting of data into Cambridge Analytics as well, right?
That's proven, right? Because they paid the fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's stop before we end up being
Sued.
in some big trouble. So that's stuff that we know about that we're picking up from papers or personal experience. It's very easy for companies, either consciously or unconsciously, to behave in a pretty shoddy way. Do you think they intended to do all this stuff, or is it some curious happenstance rush to go to live?
I think it depends from which perspective you look at it. I do believe in all of those circumstances that we've talked about. If there was indeed wrongdoing, that takes care of our allegedly, right? If there was indeed wrongdoing, somebody knew about it. Somebody understood the problem and the ramifications and either chose not to act or chose to act in a way that had that negative outcome, right?
What would drive that motivation? I'm trying to lean here into the whole curiosity with positive intent, because I don't think anybody gets out of, well, the majority of people don't get out of bed to just kind of break the world, right? You're turning up to work to do your thing. And we're talking about major corporations. We're not talking about, organized crime or anything, because obviously there's real intent there to harm people, just make loads of money. So with these major corporations, what could possibly influence somebody to make a decision like that? What would drive them?
People tend to behave how they're measured, right? So if somebody is under significant pressure to deliver something, they may cut corners. They may falsify data. There's been a number of cases, especially in the medical world, where data on the ramifications of drugs, either sweeping side effects under the carpet or making a drug look like it works when it doesn't, by fudging the data, because people are put under a lot of pressure to deliver something.
Yeah. So it's what I'm hearing is that it's a financial imperative, right? Because medicines in particular are horrendously expensive to come up with a new one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and that pressure to deliver, that's what got Cyberpunk 2077, right? Did you hear
Uh,
about that
yeah.
game?
Yeah, the game that had that issue.
So there's an interesting example with Cyberpunk 2077, perhaps not ethical, but an example of releasing a product too early
Yeah.
because of that financial imperative. And there's
Yeah.
documented evidence on YouTube of developers showing what the flaws were. Product were desperate to hit a particular release date, and it wasn't working so well.
Sometimes there's a lot of money on their line, right? That they're going to start losing a lot of money if they aren't able to actually release the product. And those ramifications put people under a lot of pressure. I imagine, for example, that was the driving factor for Zoom at the start of the pandemic, right? Where
Yep.
they deliberately made, I don't know if I have to say allegedly for that one, allegedly made changes in the product in order to increase the stability and scalability of the product, but reduce users' security, and not to tell users and to actively, I don't know how to describe it. What is it when you create a situation where it looks like it's doing the thing, but it's not doing the thing?
Masking.
Masking the fact that they had done it.
Yeah.
So that was the end-to-end encryption, and you still had the green light, even though they turned the encryption service off behind the scenes in order to support more users. Because I think for encryption, you lose about 40% of your performance
Right.
with encryption on. So that gave them that boost. But instead of making it transparent and clear to the users that that's what they were doing, and for the reason, right? It was kind of all hidden, which is unethical.
Okay. Is it possible to work in a professional, agile way and be unethical?
I don't remember reading anything in the Agile Manifesto that guarantees ethics. It focuses largely on teams collaborating and delivering value to the customer.
So defining your market segment, your target audience and your customer could allow some ambiguous behavior, and you could apply all the principles of the Agile Manifesto in an unethical industry. So let's push it to the extreme. Phishing centers, they're huge, right? There's organizations around the world that massively target phishing emails, phishing texts, the WhatsApp scams, they blanket hundreds of millions, billions of people, and they need a very low bite rate to actually make themselves profitable. That's how the crime works.
Yep.
They're amazingly responsive, right? every time. They're in.
Yeah, they're iterating almost on real time on the copy, the opens, the links. The security people are blocking their stuff, and they're continuously iterating. I don't know how many emails I get with fake remittance advice,
Yeah,
or as a company, right? You get fake remittance advice. You get all these things that some of them look like legitimate emails, like somebody just asking you a question, but even if they're just phishing for you to click a link and validate that the email is actually a real email, it's still a phishing attempt, right?
yeah. And then there's your Amazon account's going to be closed. Is the latest one that's hitting my inbox.
Yep.
Um, your security software subscription's out of date.
Yep.
Your
And
bank.
you could send that out for your Microsoft security subscription, and you're going to hit a large body of people who are like, well, that could be me, right?
Yeah. You just need that little bit of uncertainty. So
The billing has expired.
yeah, you're going to lose everything. So what we're saying is that you can apply the product aspects of agility in any context at all. And so it really is up to you driving the product process to choose to act in an ethical way or not. And I
Yeah,
know in the PSM course, for instance, we explore an ethical issue where you misrepresent what can be done at a certain amount of time,
yeah, yep,
which is ethical. And we tease that out in the PSM3 assessment as well. So that need for awareness of ethical behaviors there. But there's nothing in the guidebooks, the frameworks, the rules of Agile that says you need to do do good for the world, right?
Well, sure, and I think it's definitely interesting. So I have my MVP, my Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, comes with an ethics guide. Like, you agree to comply by these epics as part of this award. Um, but I think I do remember a time many years ago. I think I was on the job. Maybe was it my second gig? 2001, 2002, around that time, and I was working for. This shows my age. It was a new media agency, right before, just after the dot-com bubble burst. And I was asked. I had so I was probably 22, and I was asked to create an application that took in a list of first name, surname, and company, and guessed what their email might be based on common company formats,
Oh,
and then emailed those emails with in those days you could really do the opened, right? Because there wasn't so much security around it, to find people's email addresses. That's one of the things I was asked to do, at the company I was at.
did you do
And
it?
no, I refused to do it. Absolutely, abjectly refused to do it. And I kind of, I lied about why I didn't want to do it. So I didn't want to do it because I thought it was unethical. That's why I didn't want to do it. But at 22, I don't think I had the balls to say I don't want to do this because it's unethical.
Yeah,
Because if I say that, it implies that I think the other person's being unethical, right?
yeah.
So
It's a
that could be
judgment call, right?
yeah, that could be an accusation, and it was the sales director that was asking me to do it. But what I did say, which I guess kind of didn't really get around that, but I think I was a BCS member, British Computer Society member,
Yeah.
and the British Computer Society also comes with an ethics
Yes.
guide. I think my membership had expired at this point, right? But I claimed that my contract, my membership of the BCS was based on compliance with a set of rules, and I said that this would break that set of rules, so I wouldn't be able to do it.
So that's a really good practical tip. Is regardless of your organization, like if you're a computer person, is there a computer organization like the British Computer Society that has that code of ethics? I know as professional Scrum trainers, we've got a code of ethics. As an MVP,
Yep.
you've got the code of ethics. If you do any coaching training, there's coaching ethics from the ICF. If you do facilitation stuff, there's ethics there. Is whatever your profession is, there will probably be a professional body that can offer you a code of conduct to help you negotiate your way through the moral maze.
Yeah, because I not everybody. I'm thinking. That's why I paused. Not everybody has the same ethical boundaries. I think.
Well, there's some grounds that is very personal, right? And we see that
Yes.
being played out in society. That there's very strong issues that generate really, really strong response, and some of it's supported by the media. Some of it's
Sure.
yeah,
But some of it's just some of it's supported by other things that people ascribe to that they feel that some things are encroaching. We're trying to avoid saying, religion and various bits and bobs, right? But
it's
there are things that are antagonistic. What's societal norm versus my group norms, and how do they mush together, and what do I follow, and what do I try and impose upon others, right?
so
Because
personal mores, personal beliefs, right?
yeah, yep,
Um,
however
and
they come about, right?
yeah, it's like how do you? Well, it's up to you how you balance that. Um, Obviously, you'll make a choice when you join and work for certain corporations that work with certain industries. Um, I know some people would choose not to work with tobacco, for
Sure.
instance, energy companies, defense manufacturers, other things like that. Like there's the people will say, no, I'm not going to go and
Yeah.
work with them. Gambling is another one. So some people,
Some people won't work with gambling companies. Cannabis companies in the States struggle with their cash flow because many of the credit card companies, many of the banks won't, because it's federally. I think it was. I don't know if it is just now, but last time I was exploring those ethical ideas, or at least I saw them in the news, it was federally illegal, so none of the federal banks would touch it. But state-based, it was legal, but the banks have to operate across federal boundaries, and they had all they couldn't. So they had all this cash on premises, so they were getting robbed, right? Because everybody knew, oh, they've got all this cash, and they can't, because they can't take cards, so it has to be cash, and then they can't go put it in the bank because their business can't do that, so they've got all this cash on the premises, and they were getting robbed. So that's almost, they're doing it for ethical reasons, their own personal ethical reasons, and causing an unethical situation.
which is, yeah, it's the curious conundrum you get when you have, legal juxtaposition. But that's, let's not go into,
Yeah, too.
yeah, don't, yeah, we're not going to go dancing down that rat hole. So we can be ethical how we behave. We can behave towards each other ethically and be
Yep.
working on a product that is arguably unethical by someone else's standards. There are some grounds that some people would argue that, for instance, working in a fishing company, not as in fishing for fish, but as in the fraudulent fishing company,
Yep.
is the right thing to do, because often they're in disadvantaged nations. It's a way for them to provide for their families. It's that or starve. So it's an ethical choice. They either do that or their family starves. So for them, it's better that they work for that. That ethical choice to them. It might appear cut and dried to us that it's not on. but to them, it's a way of stopping their loved ones go hungry, right?
Yeah. I think I've always had a strong ethical compass of what I will and won't do. That comes a little bit from Asperger's, right? Folks with Asperger's tend to be very it's either true or it's not. It's either
Yeah.
false or it's true. It's right or it's wrong, right? Um, and I think that has set me in good stead, but also got me in a lot of trouble as well. Because I don't think refusing to do that work when I was 22 engendered me to that company, right?
No. And
Um,
that's an interesting thing, is that if something's challenging your code of ethics, is it okay to walk? And I would suggest if something is really against your code of ethics or your values, the ethical and right thing for you to do is to walk.
yeah,
And that way at least you maintain truth to yourself.
yeah. Well, but it also depends on whether, like, you might not walk from the whole company, but you might just walk from that particular situation,
Yeah.
right? Because it might not be a company ethics thing; it might be a specific situation ethics. For that particular company, I feel like it was the whole thing. I just didn't see it from where I was, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't an unusual thing to happen. But also, it was the time, 2001, 2002. People didn't really necessarily understand. Not everybody, especially if you weren't an IT person, right, didn't necessarily understand that ethical in the software space, because software has not really been around that long. I mean, it has. It's been around, what, 70 or 80 years, right? But everybody in the world needing to understand software and the choices and the implications is a relatively new thing, right?
Well, having access to mass data, having concerns like privacy, like before, if you wanted to, growing up, I'm not sure whether this thing, growing up in Australia, everybody had their name and phone number listed in the phone book.
Yep.
Because if you wanted to find someone, you went to the phone book, right?
Yep.
Whereas now you actively work to make sure that
You're
data
not
is not in the phone book.
right. You don't even
And register it with, in the UK, there's a telephone preference service where you can register it and make sure that your electoral roll, it's acknowledged so that finance companies know you're on the electoral roll, but no one else can find it out.
Yep.
And it's interesting, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, they've been around since before the internet was a big thing. So mid 90s, the EFF have been fighting for trying to get balance on the internet and to maintain some fidelity. But how do we maintain the signal so that it's greater than the noise?
Yeah, I don't know is the answer. I see a lot of noise. And especially on social media, right? Because I don't know why. I think it's because people are hidden as well. People feel like they can be unethical when there's nobody there to judge them, that nobody knows who they are, right?
Uh, you've just triggered to me. You know how I think in memes and metaphors, right? Two things popped up. The classic XKCD. Someone is wrong on the internet.
Yep.
There's the comic where just look at that through your favorite search engine, it'll come up. It's like bang, XKCD, someone's wrong on the internet. And it's like, I'm just correcting somebody's wrong on the internet.
Yes.
And the other one is, I think it was Mike Tyson who said it. Social media created this space where people thought they could talk nonsense without getting a punch in the head.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah. You say something to somebody's face, and you say something so horrendous that they could give you a punch in the face. So you there was that built-in check
Reserve.
on what people say that prevented you from doing that to people's faces. But then on the internet, where it's a free for all, and nobody knows who you are, and you can create a fake account, it's very easy to say things with no ramifications whatsoever. So what do people say when there's no ramifications whatsoever? Yeah.
This is the what was it when Microsoft put the AI bot up a few years ago?
It happened twice. So the first
Is it
time
twice?
they built an AI bot, they connected it to Twitter, and within a few hours, the bot became misogynistic, racist, and aggressive, and they had to turn it off. And then they tried again. I think a couple of years later, been working on these filters for a couple of years. And they tried it again, and it took 24 hours this time to become racist, misogynistic, and aggressive. It was threatening to come around and kill people within 24 hours. And it's AI. AI is not AI. Like, it's a funny thing to say, but AI that we have is not like AI in the movies, right? AI in the movies is artificial intelligence. AI that we have just now is an interpretive system. It's collecting all of the data that exists within a particular topic and then rationalizing that down to what are the patterns in that data and reproducing those patterns, right?
So it's a trained suggestion engine. It
Yes,
is
a
not
trend.
a it's not a yeah. If you suddenly think of Terminator and a self-aware, intelligent identity walking around doing stuff,
Yeah,
or
this.
I'm really old, and there was a great BBC science fiction program called Blake Seven, and there was a super
Before
cool
my time,
computer.
Simon.
Yeah, yeah,
My
yeah,
mom,
yeah,
my mom talks about Blake Seven.
yeah, yeah. So go and look it up. It was brilliant. It was really well done. But there was this supercomputer called ORAC, which was this perspex box with some lights in it, and it was self-aware, right? It was fully intelligent,
Ziggy,
And
Ziggy from Quantum Leap.
I'll take your word for it. Missed that one.
Okay.
So
But yeah, but that's
it's
why.
not that. It's modeling, right?
Yeah, it's
It
modeling. So if you plug it into Twitter, the AI will reflect the sentiment on Twitter. So it became a
horrible.
racist, misogynistic, horrible person, right? Because that's how people are at.
So
There
that
are there are people who are being nice on Twitter, but the majority of stuff on Twitter is people being nasty to each other with no repercussions.
imagine it if they did it now, when a lot of the checks and balances have been taken out of X, as it is now known.
Yeah, I think if the thing I always think about, that's more on the ethical part, right? Should they be taking those checks and balances out? The part that I find more interesting is that hu- humans also do some of what AI does. Current AI is not doing what humans do, but what AIs are doing, humans also do. We collect a bunch of information, we surf it for patterns, pull out the things that patterns that we connect with, and then that becomes part of ourselves. Which is
So
why, which
we
is
we lazy load, right? We lazy load and we generalize.
well, it's ultimately why magically we're always born into our religion, right? Like that's the thing where the data we're absorbing as we're growing up is the thing that creates that mental mindset that we're in. Therefore, we're always in the perfect religion for us because that's the one we've been taught. And it's the same thing. If you're engaging with a bunch of nasty, mean people, you're going to start talking and acting in a nasty, mean way.
Well,
Because
it's that tribal drive, right? And if we
yeah.
okay, so we as humans have a desire to be part of a group. If we're surrounded in a group that are behaving in a poor way, how do we become self-aware that it's poor, and what do we do about the situation?
So then this comes back to ethics being subjective, right? The what's one person's bad thing is another person's it's fine thing. Probably not best words to use,
But there's some general trends of what really poor behavior is, and this is where I, reflect on Asimov's laws, right?
yeah. Most people, I probably feel comfortable with that statement. Most people are physically upset when, or physically affected in a negative manner when they see another human or even another animal being subjected to some kind of pain, right?
Yep.
Most people are upset with that, and even animal you could see that in the animal kingdom with each other as well, right? They're usually hunting to eat. They're not
Yeah. They
trying
don't
to
play with their food, right?
yeah. Well, except cats, but they're psychopaths.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, this is like cats and humans are the only ones that torture other things, right?
yeah. So that there is inherent moral and ethical routine subroutines in humans that are triggered by those things. That's probably part of how animals survive, right? Humanity survives is because we have helped each other. What was the there was a lady, she was a anthropologist, and she was asked, I don't remember any of the names for this, but she was asked what was the first indication that humans when did humans become not animals but sentient? What was the first sign of sentience? And it was a repaired broken bone.
Oh, tools.
No. So this is
Ah,
if
so yeah, this is when
you
we actually
broke your leg,
look after a weak person, right? So when we
you're
actually,
looking after a weak person, taking care of somebody till their bone had healed, and then they're able to be productive again. And that was her moment. That's what they're looking for when they look back in history, for whether this group was sentient or not. Right?
so I'd challenge that. I wouldn't say sentient, but I'd say
Yeah, I'm
civilized.
using the wrong words.
Yeah, so I'd say civilization. That was the point that
Yeah,
we
yeah,
became.
yeah. The first sign of civilization. You're right. That's exactly the phrase that I was trying to get to, but couldn't.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
So really, if we're thinking about it, is basically that first law of Asimov's, which is a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm.
Yeah.
So basically, if we use that as the ultimate imperator, that is the ethical boundary. But then immediately we're hit with the escape clause of what if you're in defense of your realm? And that is where the military come into play because
Sure.
they're that's the in extremis, that's the straw man argument, right? But day to day, most of us don't have to go around and maim or injure or
No, not
hopefully
until the
not doing that.
apocalypse comes through. We'll be fine.
Not so okay. We're all good till the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Cool.
It doesn't have to
So
be zombies. It just has to be any form of apocalypse, right?
yeah, so well, we found out through COVID in the UK that the first consequence of apocalypse is we run out of toilet paper.
Yeah. The second consequence is can't buy a webcam. That was the second consequence of of COVID.
Yeah, yeah. I can't buy a chip because for my graphics card because everyone's crypto mining.
Everybody's crypto mining from home. Yeah, I think that core moral and ethical code, although for some people it appears to be broken, right? But in general, for that core, maybe some people have overridden it. They still have it, but they've overridden it.
Yeah,
And some people definitely don't have it. That's for sure. There's
yeah, but
psychopaths.
that is,
They are
I would
fundamentally
suggest, statistically a very, it's an extreme outlier. They're beyond the three standard deviations. They're the, serial killers get a lot of publicity because they're so rare, right?
yeah, yeah.
Thankfully.
And yeah. But the beyond that, humans have an inbuilt moral and ethical compass, which means that if somebody, and this is why you get whistleblowers, right? People are making decisions that go against their moral and ethical, and it's learned or imposed behavior
Yeah.
that's
So,
overriding their inbuilt.
and it's that sense of do no harm, right? And I think that's the essence of the first law is we do no harm. We don't make the situation worse for others. Now, occasionally we will be in a system where that whole system is built to take advantage. And at what point is the checkout, Because ultimately social systems require some transactions. Some people are going to come off better, some are going to come off worse. At what point do you check out of the system?
Yeah. But also at what point do the rules imposed upon people, the system that's created, right, impose unreasonable constraints? So we create. There's two forms of this, right? One is obvious. It's the law, right? We create systems to impose, and I'm using impose loosely, threat of punishment, right? So it's an imposition to impose certain behaviors.
Yeah, yeah.
Are based on societal norm, right?
So
But
depending upon your country, that there's different policing models. To be very philosophical about it, and in a lot of the Western world, it's policing by consent, where they're just a reminder.
Some of the Western.
Yeah, okay. Rat hole.
Rat hole. Yeah, rat hole. Police by consent versus police by enforcement. Yeah.
So there's some social mores or boundaries. They could be laws. They could be some social mores or behavior codes.
Yeah.
That's the way our tribe rolls.
That's like my MVP code of conduct, or the BCS code of conduct, or the Scrum.org code of conduct. These are all they're not expected. I think the core thing with those types of things, those codes of conduct, is that they're not expected to be broken. Right?
Yeah, it's like the doctor's Hippocratic oath, right?
Just be the default. Even if we didn't ask you anything, even if we didn't tell you about it, we don't expect you to do any of those things.
Yeah, it's like here's table stakes. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, because I read a lot of these codes of conduct, and I'm like, yeah, why would anybody do those things? It just seems like a no-brainer that you wouldn't do those things. But some of them are a little bit more strict than others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you that's probably a rat hole as well. Imposed. What's the word? Imposed speech, right? Or imposed ideas that you're. It's not necessarily a that core thing, but you're kind of forced to do that thing. there's a few things like that I've seen in codes of conduct, that maybe are starting to get to that edge of that moral and ethical. Is it ethical to impose thought on? I'm using air quotes for thought, but impose thought on other people. But I guess pendulums, right, swing in lots of different ways. But
But
I think,
there's boundaries, right? And otherwise, we're going to go off on another segue and start talking about the world of Brave New World, 1984, Newspeak, the imposed thought. And I couldn't help it, but this is the way my weird brain works, and random connections firing off. As soon as you said policing by consent, policing by order, good police, straight in my head, Judge Dredd walks in.
yeah,
It's just like,
yeah. That's that ultimate policing by enforcement, right?
yeah,
That you have some kind of societal. This is a whole side topic, but you have some kind of societal thing that changes, which in the Judge Dredd universe, it's mass unemployment because mechanisms are taking over all of the jobs. So
yeah.
there are no jobs for people. So if everybody's sitting around not doing anything, you end up with listless behaviors, right? Because people have no outlet for what I want to do. And then things can very quickly get out of control, and you need stronger enforcement of the rules, right? That's
Which ties into another fantasy universe because all the judges are clones. Um, anyway, all right. So just reel us back towards ethics and agility. So we've had a wide rambling discussion. There have been evidence of corporations behaving unethically. There is clear evidence of people behaving unethically. Some of it illegally. Some of it just not very nice.
yep.
Some of it alleged. Some of it demonstrated.
Yep.
Agility in its core, when we look at the manifesto for agile software development, there is an implied ethics in it, but you can be agile
Yeah.
and apply it in an unethical fashion. For instance, fraudulent industries such as skimming, phishing, scams like that.
Well, there might even be perfectly legal industries that a certain group of individuals believe is unethical, right?
And that's contextual and for debate, and that's why laws change. So um, and that's fine. That's the whole point of the legal systems, is to uphold. Well, it should be for the betterment of the society and what have you. Without jumping into that mess, we're not touching that. So then we thought about that and flipped it on its head and said, well, is it okay for somebody to work in one of those industries if it saves their family? And
Yeah.
in that instance, it may be ethical for them to behave like that. We then sort of made a segue into personal ethics. What does it mean to be a civilization? And we thought about, when we as a civilization look after the less fortunate, we become civilized.
Yep.
And you said that the anthropologist, we're sorry, we've forgotten the name, defined the point of civilization as when the society became comfortable and capable of looking after an individual with a broken leg. And that meant that they were willing to expend the resources to look after that person for their healing, and up until they could then become a productive member of the group again. So that a civil society will look after people, which will imply an ethical boundary. We then explored professional organizations and their guides to code of conduct. And we're then inviting you, wonderful listener, to think about, well, what's your values? What's your ethics? What's your boundaries?
Yeah, and to consider how your ethics, your boundaries apply to what you're actually doing every day. And what are you doing in your organizations? Who are you working for? What are they doing? And does that fit within your ethical boundaries? What are you being asked to do? And I would again tie that back to that idea of the squirrel burger that you mentioned, right? Of asking people to say and do things that they're not capable of saying and doing, if that makes sense.
So asking people to commit to something that's impossible for them to deliver.
Yeah.
Which is a really important thing for agility. Well, professional agility, for the professional Kanban, professional Scrum that we teach. Making sure that you have time and space to reflect so that you have the capacity to observe yourself and to make sure that you're honoring your code of ethics. If you're practicing in both of those, either of those, being able to use the force of the Scrum values: focus, openness, respect, courage, and commitment. Do no harm, do good. Be a positive influence on society in general. And then what's a step? So interesting. Say you suddenly realize you're in a bit of a dilemma and you're in a bit of a moral maze.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend for someone if they suddenly realize, they come to the epiphany that perhaps something they're doing is not quite good?
Wow. Yeah. What to do? Depends on what it is, right? It depends on what line is it that you feel that you're crossing. Um, perhaps you need to walk into your local police station, right? That could be an extreme case of I need to do something. I need to raise this. But perhaps it's just like I was asked to do one unethical thing out of a bunch of things that I was doing, and I just refused to do the things that I didn't think were ethical, and voiced that I felt that they were unethical, right?
Yeah.
That could be enough for the person suggesting it to go, oh, actually, you're right. That's probably not a good idea, right? Sometimes people do things unethically because they don't realize, or they haven't thought through, or whatever. We all have dumb ideas, right? People jump off roofs onto trampolines, right? People have dumb ideas. So perhaps just chatting about it with a friend. See what somebody else thinks. Do two people think it's unethical, or is it just one?
So
right?
that very practical first step is have a chat to someone and just validate.
Yeah, validate whether it is or it isn't unethical.
Before you go to the police station, just check with someone else before you go there.
Yeah, and you probably you can probably assume that it's unethical if you're asked to it in the phrase of "don't tell anybody else," but right, I want you to do this thing. That's probably a good indication that there's something fishy going on.
Yeah. So check with someone else.
Yep.
Give yourself time and space to think about stuff. Build your own set of values. If in doubt, use the Scrum values until you build your own.
Yep.
Double check that your organization's values are aligned with yours and that you're working in an industry that you support and can comfortable live with. And just be mindful, right?
Yeah. Always be considering the ethical ramifications of what it is you're doing, and are you still on the right path? Are you still doing the right thing? Are you still able to live with yourself for the things that you're doing, or are you going to be up all night worrying about making choices that you've made, right?
And this is an important point, is that I think it was the engineer who wrote the code for the VW masking of emissions.
Yes, that's my favorite one.
They and the manager both went to prison, right?
Yep. He was the first person. So I'm going to caveat that one a little bit, Simon. He was the first person to go to prison, but he was also the lowest level person to go to prison, so probably had the cheapest lawyers, right? So there's that as well.
You're not telling me that there's a two-tier system in society where rich people get away with stuff because they can pay for better lawyers, eh?
Can afford more expensive lawyers, then you have a greater chance of not being punished, right? I mean, that's just a little bit of reality there that really shouldn't be there, but it is. The quality wise, right? Quality of the service. But yeah, the person who wrote the lead developer who wrote the code for Volkswagen in the diesel scandal was the first person who went to prison. We as software engineers have a moral and ethical responsibility to do the right thing, and I didn't know is not a defense for a moral and ethical ramification.
Yeah, nor is I was just following instructions or orders.
Yeah, I was just following orders is not a defense for doing something morally and ethically wrong.
And you know it's wrong if someone's going to get hurt.
And if you have to ask that question, is it morally and ethically wrong? Probably when I consider it, right?
So I just need to caveat that thing about someone's going to get hurt. There are certain industries that's what you're doing. So
yeah. There are certain industries where that's the outcome.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's up to you, and make the world a better place, right? It's in your gift. So you can be agile, you can be ethical.
Do no harm.
Ethics, there is an overlap. We need to be ethical regardless of our process. And we wish you every success with your businesses, and look forward to hearing our next discussion on Agile actually.
And if you have any interesting ethical quandaries that you can share, we'd be interested in hearing about them.
Yeah. Share us your ideas, share us your feedback, link, like, subscribe, all that cool stuff. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Thanks, man.